Today, the Committee on Health, Tourism, Historic Preservation, Land, and Justice is now called to order. Today's Monday, November 9, 2020. The time is 5:02 p.m. Notices for this virtual public hearing were disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets on Wednesday, October 28, and again on Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020. The notice was also published in the Guam Daily Post on Wednesday, October 28, 2020, and Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020. The host of this hearing will mute all Zoom participants until called upon by the chair. Members of the committee who wish to speak may indicate so in the chat feature of the Zoom platform. Individuals wishing to testify shall first be recognized by the chair before speaking, and please begin by stating your name for the record. All right, and we're ready to begin. So there's only one agenda item for tonight's hearing. This is the Bill 419-35 COR, introduced by myself, Therese M. Terlaje. It's an act to add a new Chapter 75A and to amend 75109A of Chapter 75, both of Title 21 Guam Code annotated, relative to preserving the land restoration and justice mission of the Chamorro Land Trust. This is the second virtual public hearing on this bill. The first hearing was held last week on Thursday, November 5th, and we were trying to catch two different time periods with these public hearings so that as many people who wanted to testify could do that. I'd like to acknowledge, of course, the presence of my colleague, Senator Jose Terlaje, Senator Pito Terlaje. Thank you, Senator. All right, and so I will begin by introducing the bill and then calling on those who are here to testify. So the changes to the Chamorro Land Trust Act proposed in Bill number 419-35 are intended to more clearly demonstrate that the Chamorro Land Trust program is a land restoration program meant to rectify the unjust taking of Chamorro homelands by the United States federal government between 1898 and 1968. It would expand the program's eligible beneficiaries to include individuals and their descendants who owned or who ranched, farmed, or otherwise occupied the lands that were taken. Bill number 419 creates a new Chapter 75A in Title 21 Guam Code annotated that will be codified and renumbered by the compiler to mirror the current Chamorro Land Trust Act in Chapter 75 of Title 21, with specific changes outlined in Section 1 of the bill, and it shall be effective January 1, 2021. The bill seeks to keep Chapter 75 intact for historical purposes and for those who received leases prior to January 1, 2021. Bill number 419 creates a new Chapter 75A in Title 21 that will be codified. Sorry, I said that already. Forgive me. The following findings and legislative findings and intent were added to the bill to be included in the new Chapter 75A to provide some historical background regarding the Chamorro Land Trust Act. So quoting from the bill's findings and intent now, I quote, "It is the intent of the legislature in Guam to defend the history and purpose of the Chamorro Land Trust Act created in 1975 by Public Law 12-226 and enacted as Chapter 75 of Title 21 Guam Code annotated. The Chamorro Land Trust Act established a land restoration program meant to rectify the unjust taking of Chamorro homelands by the United States federal government between 1898 and 1968, and provide residential and agricultural land for those persons eligible in the form of Chamorro Land Trust Commission leases. Additionally, the legislature in Guam intends to support the expansion of the program's eligible beneficiaries to include individuals and their descendants who owned land or who ranched, farmed, or otherwise occupied the lands that were taken. The legislature in Guam finds that on September 29, 2017, the United States of America filed a case against the CLTC in United States of America versus Government of Guam, Chamorro Land Trust Commission, and Administrative Director of the Chamorro Land Trust, CV 17-00113, District Court of Guam, alleging, among other things, violations of the U.S. Fair Housing Act. Y legislature in Guam further finds that on December 18, 2018, the U.S. District Court agreed with Guam that at the pleading stage, the court could not conclude that the Chamorro Land Trust operates as a race-based entity. The court stated that the record must be further developed to address the question of whether the Chamorro Land Trust operates instead as a compensatory entity that seeks to implement the return to the people of Guam of land that the United States took from them. Furthermore, it is possible that the Chamorro Land Trust includes some land that was not taken by the United States, but if that is so, it cannot be discerned from the present record. Based on the state of the record, the court rejected the United States' contention that the court should now determine as a matter of law that Guam is violating the Fair Housing Act. The court further stated that the matter requires further exploration and an expansion of the record in this case. The legislature in Guam further finds that the Office of the Attorney General and Governor's representatives on behalf of the government of Guam, Attorney Michael Phillips and Chairperson Pika Farron on behalf of the CLTC, the Office of the Attorney General on behalf of the CLTC Director, and the United States entered into settlement conferences to attempt to resolve the lawsuit amicably and without further litigation. At the conclusion of a settlement conference on November 14, 2019, a settlement term sheet was agreed to in principle by the counsel for the parties and subject to approval by the respective parties. On December 26, 2019, the CLTC adopted Resolution 2019-08, which found the settlement terms in the agreement to be favorable for the Chamorro Land Trust program and its beneficiaries, as it preserves the program intact and would not materially affect existing leaseholders. In addition, the Commission found that the proposed modifications or amendments to the Chamorro Land Trust Act and the rules and regulations of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission would more clearly demonstrate that the CLT program is a land restoration program meant to rectify the unjust taking of Chamorro homelands by the United States federal government between 1898 and 1968, and would expand the program's eligible beneficiaries to include individuals and their descendants who owned land or who ranched, farmed, or otherwise occupied the lands that were taken. On May 29, 2020, after further settlement negotiations, the settlement agreement between the United States of America and Government of Guam, Chamorro Land Trust Commission, and Administrative Director of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission regarding U.S. versus Government of Guam et al. Was signed by the Chamorro Land Trust Commission and Imagahagan Guahan. The legislature in Guam further finds that the settlement agreement resolves the allegations contained in the lawsuit, and in it, the government of Guam does not admit liability and denies that the Chamorro Land Trust Act violates Fair Housing Act. Part of the terms and conditions within the settlement agreement requires legislative and administrative changes to the Chamorro Land Trust Act and or the rules and regulations of the CLTC. The legislature in Guam further finds that the changes proposed by this act are therefore intended to more clearly demonstrate the restoration program to rectify the unjust taking of Chamorro homelands, and that it would expand the program's eligible beneficiaries to include individuals and their descendants who owned land or who ranched, farmed, or otherwise occupied the lands that were taken. Some of the other changes that were proposed in Bill 419-35 are that all references to the word Chamorro or native Chamorro or any variations thereof will be changed to beneficiary and eligible beneficiary, respectively. References to Chamorro homelands shall be replaced with Chamorro Land Trust property, except as provided in the new 21 GCA in 2 sections. The term Chamorro Land Trust property means all available lands, which includes Chamorro homelands under the control of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission under the provisions of the law. An eligible beneficiary of the land trust will now mean any person, regardless of race, color, or national origin. 1, whose land was acquired by the United States government between 1898 and 1968, or descendants of such person. Or 2, who either occupied, farmed, or ranched land for residential or agricultural purposes for at least 1 year immediately prior to that land being acquired by the United States government between 1898 and 1968, or descendants of such person, except that if a person occupied, farmed, or ranched the land on or after December 8, 1941, and the land was acquired at any time after that date and up to 1950, the 1-year tenure need not have occurred immediately prior to acquisition by the United States government. Another provision of this bill is that a lessee will now be able to designate property after their death to the lessee's spouse, or someone who the lessee has been married to for at least the past 7 years, or to someone who was residing on that property with the lessee in a structure that has been approved as a residence at the time of the lessee's death, or someone who's not an eligible beneficiary as defined under the statute upon the death of the lessee shall receive a life estate in the remainder of the lease. And upon termination of the life estate, assignment of the lessee's remaining interest in the lease shall be governed by the applicable provisions of the Chamorro Land Trust Act as if the lessee had died without designating his or her spouse as beneficiary. Finally, Bill 419 would approve the settlement in the case, and it would clarify that the amendments to the Chamorro Land Trust law made pursuant to this act are to strengthen the land trust and in furtherance of said settlement, provided that settlement shall not absolve or relieve the United States of any liability for land takings or waive the historic demand of the people of Guam for return or restoration of the land, and provided further that the settlement shall include dismissal of allegations against the government of Guam and preclude further challenge of the Chamorro Land Trust law by the same parties on the same grounds, and preclude constitutional challenge of the provisions of the Chamorro Land Trust law as amended or added by this act. For the record, the fiscal note waiver we received from BBMR says that the bill is administrative in nature and poses no fiscal impact to any funds of the government of Guam. We've also, for the record, would like to just state that we've invited CLTC commissioners, past and present, to attend these two hearings. The administrative director, Mr. Hattick, was at the last hearing on this bill. We invited the Attorney General, who and Assistant Attorney General or Deputy Attorney General James Canto was present at the last hearing. And the Department of Land Management and the Guam Ancestral Lands Commission directors, they were both also invited, as well as the public, of course. So during the November 5th public hearing, we received testimony in support of the bill from CLTC Commissioner Arlene Berdalio, former CLTC Commissioner and former Chairperson Pika Farron, CLTC Administrative Director Jack Hattick, Deputy Attorney General Jamie Canto on behalf of Office of the Attorney General, and Attorney Michael Phillips representing the CLTC. We will now accept testimony from those on the panel. So we will begin with Mr. John Regis. And at we were informed informally, but by Director Hattick that you have been designated the chairperson of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission by the governor. And so I'd like to welcome you. Did you receive that designation?
Yes, Senator.
Great. So I'd like to welcome you as the chairperson then of the current Chamorro Land Trust Commission. Mr. Regis.
Thank you. Cool. Thank you very much. Hafaday and good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Committee on Health, Tourism, Historic Preservation, Land and Justice, Senator Terlaje, Attorney Phillips, and former Chairwoman Pika Farron. Thank you so much for your time this evening. For the record, my name is John Regis, Jr., and I've recently been confirmed as the newest member of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. And as Senator Terlaje said, I've also been appointed by the governor as the chair. I'm here today in support of Bill number 419-35. I did attend last week's public hearing via YouTube and heard Attorney Mike Phillips' testimony on the history and journey that has gotten us to where we are today and the hard-fought legal challenges since the inception of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. I'm determined in my new capacity to do what it takes to ensure that we continue to progress the mission of the Chamorro Land Trust and my predecessor, Chairwoman Pika Farron. I do echo the testimony of the Administrative Director of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, Mr. Jack Hattick, that with this ruling and eligibility expansion, it will also expand the responsibilities and increase the responsibilities of the agency to effectively and efficiently manage the lease process And as we know, with more responsibility means we'll need increased resources to increase our capacity. I know, however, this is a feat that the team is up for if it means to finally get our beneficiaries land for them to prosper. Thank you for your time and allowing me to participate today. Sidus Masi.
Thank you, Mr. Regis. And again, best of luck to you on your mission, on this trust, on this commission. And all right, we now will hear, so Pika or Attorney Phillips, you are welcome to testify if you would like. We have one more who has asked to go last, that's Mr. Laguatnia. Would either of you like to say anything, or are you, I appreciate you being here to answer questions at my request, so thank you very much for that. Would you like to add anything to your previous testimony? Ms. Farron?
Madam Chair, I'm okay. I deferred to Ms. Farron, but I'm okay. Any questions you have, or if anybody heard something and they want something clarified, I'm here for that purpose and on behalf of the commission.
Thank you very much, Mr. Attorney Phillips.
Hi, thank you, Senator Therese Terlaje, for having me here. And yes, I'll be here to answer any questions that may arise. You know, I still echo the testimony I provided last week at the first public hearing. And I appreciate Senator Jose Pito Terlaje for being on this at this public hearing. I urge all of the senators to pass this bill in its current form. And I hope for a unanimous, that the whole legislature votes unanimously to pass and approve this bill. I think it would send a very strong message to our eligible beneficiaries. And, you know, if we look back at the rules and regulations that were passed for the Tomorrow Land Trust back in 1993, I believe, that was also passed unanimously by that legislature. So I appreciate everyone's time, and Mr. John Regis, I truly appreciate you standing up and taking on the role of the chairperson for the commission. I'm sure you know it is quite a role to take on in that capacity. But you know, I really appreciate everything that you stated in your testimony today, and I feel very happy and excited for the Land Trust to be moving forward under your direction. So thank you, sir, and I look forward to more progress with the commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Farron. So, Mr. Laguatnia, you are recognized. You may proceed.
After todos, Sidus Masi, Senator Therese Terlaje, na unayon este na oportunidad za gracias a Dios lo que nagaigi si Senator Pito Terlaje sa edgi nagaigi zo put espiritu ni difunto angit za nane hogo lo que no malalago para si governo que magalahi que un tempo gaigi espiritu que za hogo Senador Pito lai za Zauna babe menti esti gifinota nei tot como gaigyo Senator Terlaje, but you know I'm just just like to speak in my vernacular, and I don't really like to say that in English because you never see an English person say I would like to speak in English.
Don't
Only tomorrow, yeah. Lo para si Pito lai Senador Pito lai sauno zo nei pago nei ge sta pago makpu itempokku gizi ancestral lands na komisyon nei lo madisesya na para makonyo talo takti za gof sentido zo ni esti tano na banda nei za kululotnya put esti tano manenata za be tunahau lokwi pika na on chogisti para on defendi man mamela siya na famaguon na puno inherensya este na tono lo put gi espiritun si defunto ben pangilinan lai Mr. Senator na tungo na gusmanatungit dan si Difunto Ben, and in the name of his spirit, the Farmers Co-op Ben Pangilinan Farmers Market, like in the interest of that is that I'm here to testify and ask questions. I am in support to move forward for the beneficiaries, but to think deeper as we move forward, because I believe in the proposed bill, the descendant, or if the descendant dies, he can designate this the trust land, would it be agricultural farmland, to whoever he decides to give it to. Now, don't na question, senor, because we are having a problem with the I don't know, Pikalay, if you've looked into this matter with subleases, with in particularly the agricultural farmlands. Now, you know, in the spirit of the law, like land trust remains in trust, like Chamorro land trust, similar to the ancestral lands. Like, it's so sad because the ancestral lands, over 4,000 years, we own these lands, you know, and then now for a generation to get it back and then to sell it, you see it in the market within months later. Now, that needs to be looked at, and I know it's private property rights. That's the legal ramifications, but you know, it should remain like within the Chamorro people. Now, what I fear, which is there is a tendency now, like Senator, for these farm leases. These there's two particular points that I would like to touch on. First of all, when they sublease these, when they give out these, they lease out these lands for farmlands. Is there any monitoring of these the agricultural aspect of these farmers? Are they really farming it? Like when they're given 25 acres of lands to farm, are they truly farming 25 acres of land? Because if they're not, I understand that the rules and regs allows them at least they have inspectors come out and once a year and check on these guys. But I know of lands that that they don't farm at all, and there are many other aspiring young farmers that would like to have an opportunity to get that. Mr. Regis, and I just feel that some of these lands are not being utilized for actual farming purposes. And number two, which leads me to, once these leases are given out to these supposedly aspiring farmers, first, do they have a farm plan? And number two, are they subleasing these? Because I know many of these farmers are not farming it. They say they farm it, but it's not them farming it. They are subleasing it to outsiders. And I'm afraid that if the leasee ever dies, he will be put the outside beneficiary as a beneficiary to these Chamorro lands. Could be under the fair housing rules again, but it's just going to end up not being entrusted by the Chamorros. The Pirulay Atanestisa Megaylay Lili that they are not farmers. They're subleasing it, and is that I believe I think that is that allowed, Pika? You know, I want you to stick into the battle, Pika, because I take my hats off to you for what you have done to protect this. Like, and the beneficiaries like should be family interests, like not in one guy that passed away and then you'll transfer it over to an outside. In particularly, there's a lot of Chinese farmers. I'm just going to lay it out. And there's many of them coming in now. There's an influx of them coming from Saipan. And many of the leasees will tell you they are farming it, but actually they are not. You look up their tax, you look up their records and it's not them. You go to IDI and it's not them. So I'm just worried about that, and the spirit of Ben it's gila di funto like Therese tunga na the co-op line was named, the farmers market co-op was named after him, and I know the funto Ben would not approve of this like. And if there's any way, Senator, now that you're still back here, number one, all right, Biba, and Pika will, and Jesse, John Regis, John, then Pidu, then Mike, Spia Leisti, I just want you guys to put your heads up on what's going on. And Pika, I'm pretty sure you may be aware of this, but I think we need to get more deeper into this and look into it, because it's not locally anymore. Support local is not local. The locals are being left out. It is these really huge outside interests that are taking over our farming industry. Sorry to say that. That's the reality of it all. And that's it. I'm in support of Bill 419-35 to move forward, but dig in deeper. And Mike, dan pido, atan na pido sa bulag no hujunggi timulan chuchuji eno na tono, jakumo man mailaw, atana sa 30 na ngongya, dan 3 na lutsan biringay nasa, para 25 na okra, dan 50 na okra. And in the spirit of angit, difunto angit, dan difunto bed pangilinan, dan todi man nasyon, iman mimimu para itano. That's off to you. Todo manilu. Jesus Masi. Pika?
Jesus Masi, Mr. Laguatnia. What you point out is it has been an issue. I will allow Ms. Farron to discuss, but I want to thank you first for your testimony, for being here. Very important that you are here. I think you have a lot of history, as you described, and also your experience on not just the Ancestral Lands Commission, but on the farmers boards, the soil and water boards and the farmers. So, Sidus Masi. And I'm glad that you described Senator Pido's history also, in these efforts. So it's a very, it takes all of us. So we're gonna all have to work together. Okay, so Pika, if you don't mind answering that, I know that those are the issues that you were trying to address very much, and so if you could just bring us all up to speed on where we are at with those things. And if I may point out that the bill is only talking about beneficiaries for spouses, but Pika, please, yeah.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Senator. Mr. Laguania, thank you for your testimony today. I would like to share my, my experience. 4 years on the commission. I'm no longer on the commission. However, Mr. John Regis is now sitting there, and I'm sure he is, getting up to speed on all of this. But really, the 2 points you talked about, one is your concern that our Tomorrow Land Trust lessees that have agricultural land, they're not using it for agricultural purposes, and there may even be subleases, which are explicitly prohibited. So subleasing is prohibited on any land trust property unless the commission has given prior approval in certain cases. So if there's ever a sublease that is in complete violation of the lease, however, I've heard also along the way that this is happening out there. And it really comes down to our resources in the agency. We are so understaffed. I believe my last count, we had 8 land agents that are working to manage thousands and thousands of acres of property, thousands of leases. So I would say, really what that is that means our compliance arm is like missing, right? We don't have a compliance team, or we have one individual on the team that does compliance checks, but that's one person for thousands of acres of leases. And really a lot of his work is reactive, right? So he doesn't really get a chance to go out there and do these spot checks and really see who's on the property, who's farming and all of that. So, you know, it's always been my goal when I was the chairperson to get more budget so that we can hire a team to really have a strong compliance team that will be able to go out and identify these lessees and properties. But also at the same time, you know, because we don't have that yet, what we discussed at the commission level was moving forward, when we are going to give out an agricultural lease, a farm plan is required. And we were also looking at requiring these agricultural lessees to be a bona fide farmer, and to have, if they don't have experience, then they should attend classes with either the Department of Agriculture or the University of Guam, so that the commission can feel comfortable leasing the property to that individual, because we know that they're in it to actually farm the property. So those were some things we were doing at the commission level, trying to get more budget so that we can have a real strong compliance team, but then also adding in those requirements before giving out the agricultural leases. So also for your second point, you know, you were concerned about a lessee passing away and giving his land to somebody that maybe isn't a Chamorro or an eligible beneficiary. So right now, and even with the, right now, if a lessee passes away, they can only leave it to a certain list of their relatives. So it has to be their spouse, the widow or widower of their siblings, children, grandchildren, that kind of thing. And the Chamorro Land Trust does a good job of verifying that whoever they designate as a beneficiary meets the eligibility criteria, so that it stays like within the family. What this bill is proposing is, if a beneficiary is living on a property in a home that that is built and approved by the Chamorro Land Trust, if the lessee passes away and their spouse is not an eligible beneficiary, if the lessee, when at the time of their passing, if they had been married to their spouse who is not an eligible beneficiary, if they've been married for at least 7 years and they have been residing in the house together for at least the past year, then the Chamorro Land Trust will allow that spouse to stay in the house on the property as a life estate. And what that means is, as a life estate, they can stay in the house and then until they pass away. So that means we wouldn't, as the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, we would not kick them out if that was the original lessee's last wish, right? So that their spouse can stay in their family home. So that's what this bill would do. I feel like it's really a compassionate measure. But other than that, there is no other section or anything we're doing that would allow a lessee to pass the land on to anyone that isn't within their family or that doesn't meet that spouse criteria for the life estate. Okay.
Thank you very much, Pika, Ms. Farron. And so, Mr. Regis, did you want to add anything to this discussion? All right, and okay, thank you. And so I would ask Senator Pido if you have any questions for anyone here or any questions on the bill.
Just Masi, Senator Terlaje. This is Senator Terlaje also. Danklu na si Jesus Masi ni estina bill the Lufuneng Litera. This bill solidifies the problems and the issues that we're facing right now. The dinansya si Mr. Laguanya. Ani malago pa segundo gobyerno estigi masi enjo presisunya. Ipomanafona itaw-tawta. Hafa na tano gobyerno sina tanay siya. Jadi nanti si Pika niya sasangan siya put Zangin po Chisferi gato itano, debi di unu ki familia pat unu ki asagwa pat tagwano siya. Za utungwa nagagi esta ilifuno ezi rules and regulation. Lo debi di ta dalaki ezi rules and regulation zo mana posible zo maatan zo macece kedu siya manasaga gi tanui land trust. Za besangana talo undang kulun na si Jesus masi Mr. Laguanya sa dinancho 100% dinancho. Hagulo kwi no pika utungwa no na hagasaw gwigi land trust do tungwa no tungu ichi somo do tungu I fundamentum hafa siya na policy man malaknus za pwede amon managuti kanay za manasuday dinaso za ta continua za ta fa maulig inilatsi za Therese dankulun na si Jesus masi sa esti na bill be sapotisti ni adit I 419 sa deposi anigi po na tunas todo I problema ni ta society manaunet paikot ti dan of course ya za esti na bill esgi po solidifica I problema pago between itaw-taw tagi sa Guam zan eji mangaigi sa Amerika ni mangaigi ki federal pos dangkulun na si Jesus masi Mr. Laguanya pika si Jesus masi thank you very much the besangan talo John hagu pagud mumanenya esti land trust ispia empeño maila datan ali tan matatsung data fan atulay ka hinasyo si Therese kagi gwini isobrinao jangwahu data fan matatsung data fan asuda inasu data na claro hafa siya de por si necessary para tatsogwi por esti itano tagi jagwam Jesus masi
Jesus Masi, Senator Terlaje. All right. Unless there is anyone else on the panel would like to add, I would then just close on this bill. Thank you again for being here. Thank you again, especially Senator Terlaje and all those who testified. I'm grateful for all the work that each of you has done and to put into ensuring that Chamorro Land Trust is protected for future generations. As I said at the last hearing, we have seen firsthand the impact of the massive land takings on Guam's families. Too many who live in poverty over 8 decades later without a stable place to live, and their ability to use the land to provide for their families is severely disrupted. It took years of vision, courage, advocacy, protests, even lawsuits to get where we are today, and in honor of those who preserved these rights for us, we must never stop fighting for protecting and expanding the potential of this land and its precious resources to nurture and sustain future generations. It's our duty as lawmakers to safeguard the land restoration mission of the trust, to protect the trust from being raided by special interests, to manage the trust better and make it more conducive to thriving residences and agriculture, and to cottage industries, and to carry those homeland programs into perpetuity for future generations so that we truly remedy the long-term injustice of massive land takings. I want to encourage the public watching to provide testimony regarding these changes to the Chamorro Land Trust Act. You may submit those to my office at the Guam Legislature or to my email at senatorterlajeguam@gmail.com. I'm trying to get this bill reported out as soon as possible so that the legislature can act swiftly on this legislation and so that the CLTC can finally move past the lawsuit and work aggressively to continue its mission of restoring land to those who owned or who ranched, farmed, or otherwise occupied the lands that were taken. And there being no additional individuals to present further testimony, the committee will accept testimony until November 13th. Again, tangkuluna si Jesus Maasi for your attendance, for your testimony, for your work for many years to preserve this Chamorro Land Trust. Jesus Maasi. The time is 5:42 p.m. Thank you. This hearing is now.